Most of the food and drink brands that I speak to say they've got a tone of voice. But walk down any aisle in the supermarket or retailer and you'd struggle to tell them apart. Today, with my guest, we're going to talk about why that happens and how challenger brands can really cut through. Let's get into the episode. You're listening to Makin Mighty, the Challenger Sessions. I'm Simon Greenwood-Haigh, and this is the show where we get honest about how challenger brands really grow without the fluff. Today, I'm joined by Kevin Karaca, who runs The House Outside, which does brand messaging and storytelling. Kevin is genuinely brilliant at helping brands stand out in crowded categories. Worked with him for years. I can definitely attest to how good he is at doing that. So thanks for joining us, Kevin. Really appreciate it. But before we get into it, could you give everyone a quick 1 minute overview of who you are, what you do, and the kind of brands you tend to work with, please?
Absolutely. It's lovely to be here, Simon, and thanks for having me on. Um, so yeah, I mean, where to start? Um, so I really work with individuals and brands to just help understand what their story is and what makes them different. What's their perspective? I sort of came about here to this point from a bit of a bizarre route. I always felt like an outsider as a kid, and I'm a second generation immigrant. So I grew up with one culture inside the house and a totally different culture outside the house. And I always felt like I was an outsider looking in. And I think that's really served me throughout life quite nicely to be able to see things differently and see things in a way that just challenges the norm, I suppose. And that's kind of the attitude I bring to anyone I work with.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Yeah, I think the projects that feel personal and passion projects are always the one that seems to get the most traction. So yeah, I love an origin story, and it definitely helps bring it to life. So the first question I ask all my guests is, when you think of the word challenger, what does it mean to you?
It's such a great word. Um, it really is a great word. So I think, and this is going to lead on from my the previous answer. Really, for me, challenging, being a challenger is really looking at what the world is, what right now, and going, this can be better. This doesn't have to be like this. We can do better than this. And so when I think of a challenger brand, I think of a brand that's looking at the status quo and going, nah, I know a better way of doing that and I'm going to give it a go. And that's hard. Like, that's proper hard to do, because if you're challenging the status quo, you're challenging the whole system. So there's a really, I've got a real soft spot for anyone, and it is, we're talking about individuals here that are really doing the work. So anyone who's willing to do that, I've got a real soft spot for them. So challenger, yeah, for me is just anyone willing to stand up for something that they care about.
Nice, love that. Um, and so thinking more particularly about your space of brand messaging and storytelling, the thing that I come across with a lot of brands I work with or a lot of brands I speak to is they believe they have a tone of voice, um, but everything sounds the same. So from your perspective, there obviously are outliers in that. Not everybody's sounds the same, but a good cross section believe they've got it nailed and they really haven't. So from your perspective, what do you think the root problem is?
Do we touch on AI at the moment, or is it too early to speak about AI?
As soon as you're ready, mate. It's always the elephant in the room. It's always listening.
um, oh, there's so much scary truth in that. Um, I'd say for me, the first thing is fear of standing out. And this is really ironic that there's a fear of standing out, because we are trying to stand out and do something different, right? If we're challenging whatever we're challenging, we're trying to do it different. But there's always this little nagging fear, I find, that holds people back from speaking their truth, or speaking the about the things they care about, speaking and communicating from a place of, this is what we stand for. And so I think that then trickles down into brand copy, into how how brands show up in the real world is from this place of like, well, let's just hold back a little bit because they might not like that or they might not like that. And so I think fear is the big thing holding everyone back. Fear to just say what they think and say what they feel. And there's a caveat to that of obviously don't go out and offend people. That's not cool.
Yeah.
But being willing to stand for something that you believe in, that's important. And that has to carry through into a brand, the brand tone, the brand personality, and kind of just how you show up in the world and the things you do.
Yeah, I definitely hear that. Just the permission to be brave. I mean, if it's your business, what's the risk? Obviously, like you say, if you're offending somebody, that's not something you want to do, not something you want to be seen doing. But being brave and standing for something and taking a hill is a good thing, surely. But you're right, a lot of brands struggle to do that with conviction, I think. And I think what
There's a fantastic
no, go on, mate.
there's a fantastic line that I've come across quite a lot recently. I heard it first from Mark Shaler, which is along the lines of, "If you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything." And I'm constantly reminded of that. It's this idea that if I'm not standing for the things I believe in, then I'm just willingly accepting everything else. And so this is why I have this poster behind me. This idea of having an opinion is really important to any business, any individual, whether you're creating a personal brand or a business brand. It doesn't matter.
And I think it's reminded me of a conversation I had with somebody last week, and it's the disconnect between founder and entrepreneur passion and then the consumer facing or the business facing or whatever it might be, but the front end of their brand. So this particular example, it was I won't say the name of the brand, but it was a snacking brand. It was good, clean. It looked very functional. It looked quite boring packaging wise in a very, very busy place. So when I came on the call, my questions were around, tell me how you stand out. What's the point of difference? How do we create a gap in the market, or how do we exploit a gap in the market? And he spoke with so much passion. And I said, what you've said isn't what you've done. So if we can bottle what you, so he said, look, I think everything on shelf is shit, and I want to fix that. People are filling their bodies with shit. I want to fix it. It's like, that is your brand, not this dull looking packaging you've created. And I think there's partly fear, but then the disconnect between think and do, or founder and front end, it tends to be massive in my experience. Uh,
And the bigger the organization, the more gap like of layers of people there are between founder and the doer, let's say, um, the harder it is to get that passion through. And there's some outliers in that for sure. You've got amazing leaders who speak from the heart, who really convey what they care about. I mean, it's overused, but Steve Jobs was fantastic at that. Like you can't deny his passion for storytelling and the amount of prep and effort he put into those moments in his career that he spoke on stage in public. Did a one of his very famous launches. He rehearsed for them. They weren't like he didn't just pull it out the bag last minute. That was hours and hours of practice to be able to get his passion across so other people can pick up on that.
what do you think the role is of tone of voice, storytelling, messaging? What role does that play for a brand? Because I think it's often overlooked as something that's needed, but its importance can be overlooked. What's your opinion on that?
So I think that I mean to answer that, maybe the first thing we need to agree on is what is brand.
Mm.
What is a brand? Because it's still so often thought of as a logo or a logo and some colors, or a logo, some colors, and some type. Like it's so often misthought of as what it is. None of those are brand, by the way. None of those are a brand.
Mm.
They make up parts of the brand. They contribute to the brand, but they are not the brand. The brand, for me, from my perspective, is as simple as what people say about you. It's what makes you memorable. What promise you give to people and keep. That's a key part of that. so that they have that feeling, that emotional connection with your brand. And this is exactly the same with people, right? You and I, we've worked together, we've spoken a lot over the years, and like I have a genuine, warm sensation about you. When I think of Simon, I'm like, oh yeah, Simon, he's a nice guy. Like I really get on with him. I can always have a decent conversation with him. We chat about things, very direct, and it's like nice to have a direct conversation for once, rather than someone beating around the bush. And
Yeah.
you're like, oh, okay. That's the a thing I feel towards you, and that is your personal brand in a sense. And we create that by doing and showing up consistently over time. So if brand is a feeling, a perception we're trying to create in the world, tone of voice, language, storytelling are how we show up and do those things. Yes, we need a set of colors that evokes the kind of sensations we're needing, and typefaces, fonts, imagery, logos, and I say logos plurally, semi-intentionally there, with the new sort of like multifaceted different variations of logos that are coming about. The way our website works, but also the way we speak, the way we send newsletters, the way we write captions in our social media posts. All those things are little touch points that just add to to create the sense of a brand, to create that feeling, that emotional connection. When I received that parcel from Painter Jacket saying "Thank you, you legend," that was the outside of the packaging. I picked it up and I was like, "That's fucking sick!"
Yeah.
Like they have made me feel well special by sending me that.
Yeah.
And I couldn't have been more excited to open it up very carefully,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I could keep it, open it up and get my jacket out and wear it with pride and like real connection to that brand. And that's the power of using words, using story to create that connection between you and a consumer.
And it is. It just that's a founder or a set of founders or a board helping that travel through the supply chain and the business to making sure you're feeding that messaging. But the amount of cool entrepreneurs you'll meet and then be let down by what you see from a consumer facing point of view is I can't think how many times that's happened, and it just doesn't translate. And I think it always comes back to that fear that you mentioned, and looking at what the big boys are doing and thinking you've got to follow suit. And I think there's definitely examples that I can think of. I'm sure you've got lots more where founders are trying to be clever with their tone of voice. So maybe they've established it's really important, storytelling, messaging is really important, and then they take it too far away from what it should be. Have you seen examples of that? And what, in your experience, do founders get wrong when they try and be too clever, and it maybe loses clarity? Or
Yeah, this is. I mean, just generally when writing, well, just generally when communicating, that this is a really important point. This sort of clear versus clever idea. We live in a busy world. We're, I mean, ignoring external stimulus, we have somewhere between 40 to 60,000 thoughts a day, if I'm remembering that correctly. It might be 60 to 80, but I
a
think
lot,
it's 40 to
a
60,000
lot.
thoughts a
Yeah,
day. A shit ton of thoughts.
yeah,
Most of them, I think 95 to 98% of them are negative, by the way. And I think around 80+% are also the same thoughts we had yesterday. So our minds are busy repeating stuff that's mostly negative. So firstly, we need a load of
it's grim.
positivity in our lives just to
Yeah,
make life better.
yeah, that's
But
grim.
also, like, if, if if we've got all those thoughts going through our heads, and then we're also getting bombarded by messaging from the external world, notifications on our phones, messages from friends, promotions about this, emails about that, advertising, billboards, TV, the dog barking at the postman, like whatever else is going on. Like our heads are busy. So if you're trying to get through, dog and postman, sorry, literally on cue. If you if you are if you're trying to get through to someone, the objective is to remove the barriers between you and the person you're trying to speak to. And if you're being clever about things, you often can fall into the trap of having to make them think to work out what is going on. Whereas if you're clear, well, then you're clear. It's simple.
Yeah.
There's a really beautiful advertising campaign. Well, I mean, The Economist is who it's run by. The Economist have a long history of doing some amazing bits of advertising. And I have to pull out the exact example. I hadn't thought this before, but they ran a series of ads that were really playing into this clear versus clever idea. And for example, here's one. It's just a red background with a bare classic red with white text, and all it reads is. And there was a certain cultural thing going on here, which I'm sure you'll all remember from this. But all it reads is, somebody mentions Jordan. You think of a Middle Eastern country growing with a 3.3% growth rate. Actually, quite clever when you think about it, and that's part of their brand values, is that they're speaking to people who perceive themselves as smart.
Yeah.
But it's actually really clear what they've done.
Yeah.
They've given you a cultural diversion,
Yeah.
and then gone, but you clever person, you're thinking about this.
Yeah.
And they've done it in a really simple and clear way. And so I think that they've balanced that beautifully there. But ultimately, yeah, what we're looking for is clarity, right? We're trying to get our point across in the simplest, shortest, easiest to understand way possible.
Yeah, I think when I think of sales stories in particular, the ones that quite often fall down. I mean, I see all sorts when I work with people, but the most frustrating ones is where it's really well thought out, but you're asking the buyer, but in whatever format that is, to join too many dots themselves. And I think if you can lay it out really clearly, where it's 6 sentences and I know the result and I can follow that, it's logical, bit of magic in there, perfect. But quite often the story is missing those kind of leaps of faith that you could end up in one direction or another. Yeah, okay, love that. And when we think about this space and for challengers in particular, big brands have big budgets, big awareness, big distribution. Challenger brands don't. So how can being a challenger, thinking about storytelling, messaging, give them a competitive edge versus big budget, big brands?
I think the first step is understanding the maturity of the market you're in. So Eugene Schwartz has got an amazing book called Breakthrough Advertising. He talks about the five maturities of a market, from like a brand new market to a very developed market. And within that, he lays out with perfect clarity exactly what you should do in each of these markets. If you haven't got the book, go get the book, or just Google it, or alternative search engine of your choice. I use Ecosia. They plant trees. That's better than not planting trees.
Nice.
It's not the best solution, but it's a good one. Use that instead. Once you know the maturity of your market, you can start to think about how you start to speak to that market. A brand new market needs clarity to the utmost degree because no one knows what this thing is yet. So if you're entering or creating a new category, Moju did a great job of this with the help of the brilliant strategist Alex Smith, whose book No Bullshit Strategy anyone should read. They were in the juice category, and they moved to the sports nutrition category. They changed from creating ginger drinks to ginger shots, because shots you can get your head around. It's a high concentrated element of like high concentrated nutritional boost, whereas a juice is kind of like, well, you have that for breakfast. But when they're moving into this and creating this almost new category, they have to be really clear about what it is that they're doing here. This is not that they only had one message that they went out with. And so I think the first step then is understanding the market maturity. So is it a brand new market that people don't understand, or do you have to differentiate yourself on features and benefits, which is kind of like the middle sections? Or if it's a really, really developed market, you start to differentiate yourself on purpose and values. So understand that. And then I can't remember the question. Where were we going?
So what edge do challenger brands have thinking about storytelling and messaging versus bigger brands?
Thank you.
The foundation's there.
So you've got that, and that then defines your approach. And then you can start to build the story based off of that. So you can start to figure out how you're going to speak about whatever you're speaking about. If we're talking about sports nutrition, like individual nutrition, well, then there's a very clear narrative you can follow down: better performance, better health, and then the results, the benefits of that. Whereas the bigger brands with bigger awareness tend to be operating in really developed markets, and they're trying to then play with the value purpose pieces. The challenge they have is that they're massive corporations and they don't really have value or values or purposes. They just care about making money. Now, making money is important. That fuels us and allows us to keep doing our work. But they're talking bullshit. And so with a smaller challenger brand, we have that opportunity to speak from the heart. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying if it's a new market and there's no one else really in that space, you shouldn't talk about the things you care about. Definitely do. That's the point. But it's just not the only thing that matters. So what advantage do challenger brands have? Firstly, everyone loves an underdog. We all love the person challenging the system, challenging how things are. And playing into that is this general state of dissatisfaction with the world anyway. So whenever we see someone punching above their weight, we're like, yeah, you go do that. I'm with you on this.
Yeah.
So I think we can naturally play into this inherent love of the underdog, love of challengers that we have. But we also got to do that with an element of care. We got to challenge with compassion. We can't just go out and say they've got it all wrong. It's like, no, we're building on what they've done and we're doing it better. We're doing it differently because there's a better reason for that, and that's kind of where what you stand for comes into things. But the other benefit is that generally we're smaller. We've got less bureaucracy to get through. We can play with things and test things quicker and easier to really see what works and what resonates with people. Big brands spend a lot of money doing research. Now, interestingly, Apple never did research with their ads. They just ran them. Ken Siegel's book, Insanely Simple, is a really, really wonderful catalogue of the work he did as creative director for Apple for many years. He worked with Steve and then in the non-Steve period and then back with Steve again, and worked with a lot of other tech companies at the same time. And he talks about the insane amount of simplicity that Apple had in how they ran stuff compared to Dell and Samsung and all those other people who just embedded complexity into it. It's like Apple, we never did any research. We knew what we were trying to say. And this comes back to our earlier point of the founder being able to spark the inspiration in everyone else in their team. Steve was able to do that. And so whenever they ran something, they knew it was going to work. Most of the time, didn't always, because there was a speed and reactiveness that they were able to play on. So as a smaller brand, smaller business, we can just like dive in and do stuff and launch in a day, maybe in 2 days, compared to a bigger brand that has to take it through 3 rounds of research, focus groups, get it passed by the, I don't know, whoever, depending on the organization, the board or the marketing director, CMO, whoever will be the blocker for that. Now, don't get me wrong, that happens in small brands too. And I've worked on a fantastic project with a brand, and we were deciding as a magazine that we're putting out really beautiful brand storytelling, beautiful imagery. We were just deciding the front cover, and it got canned by the CEO. Half the money had been spent already. The other half would have been reclaimed by selling this thing. So just threw thousands of pounds down the drain for who knows why. There was never a reason.
It's why it baffles me when brands race to act like bigger brands, or businesses race to act like bigger businesses. It just don't. Your charm is in the nimbleness, and understand it if you want, but if people racing to understand all the terminology and, you know, how would a Unilever do things? I want to do it that way. No, don't. Do your thing. Do it really well. Do what they can't do. That's the key.
Absolutely, and that's a really good point. Like, and this is just general point now. It's less about comms, but me, founder of a new brand, I can't compare myself to a Unilever brand. We're at totally different business stages. Like, we have compare yourself to Mars when they started, not now.
Yeah.
Compare yourself to a brand who's a few months ahead of you, not decades ahead of you. Like, it's incomparable. We can't play that game. Like, Nike do fantastic adverts, but if you're a new sportswear brand, you can't go out and do Nike style adverts. They've got a huge amount of awareness and brand equity already. You need to build all of that first. So you're starting from a totally different place. Take inspiration, sure, but don't copy them.
Yeah, it's something that I think is easy to forget when people are racing to try and be ahead. So I think, so final question in terms of giving something practical for people listening. So if there's a founder out there who wants to sharpen their tone of voice tomorrow, what's the first thing they should do?
Oh, good question. I would be. I'm gonna be quite bold in saying this. If you're a founder that doesn't quite understand marketing and is playing the "I don't care about marketing" card, get interested about marketing. That's going to be one of the most useful tools you have, particularly when speaking to marketing people about getting your idea out into the world. Get interested by it. That might take some doing, but it's going to be a useful tool in your toolkit. But assuming you've got a bit of a knack for getting your point across to people, I would lock myself in a cabin somewhere and just write from the heart. If writing's not your thing, speak into a camera, speak into a voice recorder or your phone, and just record how you speak. Then you can use that to listen back to play back to yourself or read back to yourself, and really go, okay, these are the things that keep coming up. These are like my little traits that I can pull on and repeat and maybe systematize in some way to pull into the brand. Now, there's a lot of conflicting advice about write like you speak, don't write like you speak. You can't write like you speak. You can only write like you speak. Like, forget any of that. Just write from the heart, speak from the heart. And I think if you're trying to like tune into your tone, find your tone, the best way is practice. There are no hacks. There are no shortcuts. Shortcuts lead you to dead ends. Do the work. That's really where it comes from. That might be the wrong answer for some people, and there are lots of people selling snake oil out there and shortcuts to growth, shortcuts to getting it right, using AI to define your tone of voice or change copy to on-brand copy. I haven't seen any of it work. Call me old-fashioned, but I think doing the reps is the only way to build muscle. And that's the same with telling stories, with finding our voice, finding what we care for. Yeah.
Right, mate. Thank you so much. That's it's really valuable. There's loads of kind of references that I'm sure people will be going away and googling, buying books, and some really practical tips for the challenges that are listed, I'm sure. And if anybody, I hope you don't mind me saying, Kevin, but if anybody wants to get in touch, I don't give lots of recommendations generally, but I've worked with Kevin, and as someone who is an English graduate, I feel like I could write and communicate relatively well. Working with Kevin helped me to solidify the storytelling that I think is so important. And sometimes just having somebody who is skilled to bounce that off is what you need. If you don't feel like you're a skilled communicator, Kevin will help you get there. But yeah, can highly recommend working with Kevin, and focusing on storytelling will help you sell more. Whether you see it as a sales function or not, your storytelling will help you sell more, guarantee it. So mate, thank you so much for your time. Been really valuable.
I really, really appreciate those generous words. Thank you, Simon. Yeah, love being here. Great conversation. And I'm going to close with one final book that maybe everyone can go out and check out, and it's called Stories Sell by a chap called Matt Dix. Really, really fascinating book. Beautiful stories. The audiobook is well worth a listen to. The way he tells his stories and weaves it into that is great. But buy the physical book as well and make notes. If there's one thing you do, read, listen to that.
Beautiful. Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for having me.
Yeah, appreciate that.
So thank you for listening to today's episode. If you found this useful, please share it with somebody who's building a food or drink brand who's trying to stand out. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can catch the clips on Instagram, Makin Mighty, or TikTok at Makin Mighty. If you've got any questions or comments, would love to hear them. I'm makinmighty@gmail.com. Watch out for the next episode, the next guest, and hopefully some more useful insights. Catch you on the next one.